As part of my work for Board Game Geek, I attend a lot of game conventions each year, and those conventions are indeed work. I'm interviewing designers and publishers about games they have coming out in the future. I'm taking pictures of lots of games that I think people will want to see, regardless of my own levels of interest in those designs. I'm arranging designer diaries. I'm doing lots of things in order to do my job. But thankfully, Board Game Geek hosts 2 conventions of our own where I get to indulge myself and play pretty much whatever I want. So at BGG-Con in November 2019, I indulged myself by playing a lot of The Crew, a game by Thomas Singh and Cosmos that will be released in English under the name The Crew, The Quest for Planet 9. Now, if you're not familiar with the game, but you know trick-taking games, I can explain this game very briefly by saying it is a cooperative trick-taking game in which each hand of cards represents its own game. It qualifies as a mission, and you have to complete certain tasks during that mission, and if you complete all the tasks, then you win. You complete the mission, you win the game. If you fail any one of the tasks, you lose the game, and you can just play it over. The box includes 50 missions, so there's lots of stuff for you to explore. If you're not familiar with trick-taking games, well, The Crew kind of acts as a trick-taking game with training wheels. The rulebook guides you through what a trick-taking game is, and you can start learning how to play them by completing the missions. So the missions serve 2 purposes. They change up what a trick-taking game is, and they also teach you how to evaluate a hand and actually play trick-taking games. Let me show you the decks in more detail, and then we'll talk more about the game after that. Here are the components for The Crew. You have 2 decks of cards. The larger deck has 40 cards in it, with cards coming in 5 suits, with the 4 colored suits ranging in value from 1 to 9, and the 5th white or uncolored suit of rockets having numbers from 1 to 4. You have a smaller deck of cards that has only the 36 colored cards in it, 1 to 9 of the 4 colors. You are going to shuffle this deck, distribute it evenly among the players in the game. The basic game is 3 to 5 players. There are special rules for 2 players. I won't talk about that right now. You have a reminder card. Each player gets 1 of those. I'll explain the use of those later. You have some tokens. Well, each player gets 1 of these communication tokens. Other tokens might be used depending on the mission, and each player looks at their hand of cards, and whoever has the 4 of rockets will be commander for the current mission. So they assemble this token that falls apart quite often and set it in front of themselves to remind everyone who's in charge, at least for the initial trick. So The Crew uses fairly standard trick-taking mechanisms where the leader for a trick is going to choose a card from their hand, and everyone must follow suit if possible. So if I play a yellow card, everyone must play a yellow card if they can. If I play a rocket, everyone must play that if they can. If they can't, then they can play whatever they want. If a rocket is played into a trick, and a trick constitutes 1 card from each player, then the highest rocket wins that trick, and whoever played that card will lead the next trick. If no rocket is played, the highest card of this suit led. So if I lead a yellow 7, then the highest yellow card will win, except if a rocket is played, then the highest rocket wins. So it doesn't really matter who collects the cards because you're not worrying about collecting tricks or scoring points or anything like that. In the first mission of the game, you shuffle the small deck of cards, you turn over 1 card in front of the commander, and the commander must capture that card, the pink 9 in this case, in order to complete the task, win the mission, and win the game. So sometimes the task will be incredibly easy. If you look at the commander's card, they actually have the pink 9. They can play the pink 9. Everyone else will play a pink card. If they don't have pink, they'll play some non-rocket card. This will be the highest card in the suit led. The commander takes it. The task is done. Victory in 1 card play. Sometimes the task will not be as easy. If instead of the pink 9, I have the pink 8, and someone else has the pink 9, well, then I can't just play pink because eventually someone's going to play the pink 9 and they will win the trick instead of me. Maybe I could lead the 4 of rockets and hope that that person doesn't have a rockets and they can discard the pink 9 and then I'll win it with my highest card. But, of course, they might have trump. And if they have trump, they must play it, and then here I am, unable to win again. If I have lots of trump, then clearly I can play a trump. Someone will have to play the 3 rocket. play the 2 rocket, and then someone can play the 9 because they have no rockets because I have all the rest of them. So the mission often involves you assessing your hand and determining who can win which tricks, but it's all in context of completing the task. If I don't have this pink 9, but instead there's a pink 2, and let's say I don't have any high pink, I have these cards. I'm adjusting my hand a little bit. How am I going to win the pink 2? If I lead the pink 1, I'm not going to win. If I lead the rocket, the 4 of rockets, I might win, but I might not win the 2, depending on who has it. So it's all about evaluating your hand and trying to determine how you complete the task. If you do this, you shuffle up the cards, you deal them out again for the next round, and the next time you have mission number 2, you turn over 2 cards, and the commander is going to choose one of them, and the next one goes to the player on their left. Okay, so now there's 2 things. This person must capture the green 6, this person the pink 6, and as long as you do both of those things, you win. The next time, if you do that successfully, you go to mission 3. You put out tokens for 1 and 2. Turn over this, and the commander again is going to take one of these 2. But whoever takes this one, they have to capture the yellow 6 before the pink 3. As long as that happens, you win. You continue in this manner with the missions getting more complicated and challenging as you progress through the 50 missions in the game. There's an overview of the crew, which I played more than 50 times on a copy that I purchased at Spiel 19. Now, very little information about this game had been made public, at least as far as I understood, prior to Spiel. We got information from Cosmos, had a very short description. There was a lot of German in the rules. The missions are all in German. There's tons of text in there for the story that is behind the game. I'll talk about that in a moment. So I didn't know anything about it. Yet, the game almost immediately shot up to the top of the Fair Play charts. Started paying attention. People started saying it's a cooperative trick-taking game. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm in. You don't have to tell me more. I will go get it. It has a retail price of only 13 euros. I found it 8 euros at a retailer, and then copies just kind of vanished. It didn't appear anywhere on the BGG Geek Buzz, again, mostly because of the German text in the game itself. There were very few English speakers who were making their way through all that text at the show, but we started hearing other people talking about it, and then a lot of people took it home with them, and like me, have fallen in love with the game. So the crew is really interesting because it presents a real twist on how you play trick-taking games. You're not worried about capturing tricks, or you're not trying to take as many tricks as possible. You're not worrying about points. There's none of the other sort of things you often see in trick-taking games, but you have specific challenges, and all that matters is completing those challenges, and they test your skills in playing trick-taking games, evaluating and playing your hands. So all the knowledge that you have acquired from playing trick-taking games comes into play in the crew, because you will have to read what other people are playing, try to evaluate their hands. You're trying to void yourself of suit so that then you can throw off a suit that you don't have to hopefully guide a card to someone else that they are trying to capture. So there are tools to help you, but they are very limited, and you have to learn how to use them well. Let's return to this first mission where I'm the commander. I have the 4 of rockets. I've got the token in front of me. I'm trying to capture the pink 9, but my hand's a little different from before. I've randomized this a bit. Now I have very few pink cards of low value. They are not going to help me capture the pink 9. And I might want to let my fellow players know that. I can do that through the communication tool that each player has. Each player has a token. During the game, after the task have been assigned and between tricks, not during a trick, you can choose to take a card from your hand, put it face up in front of you, and then mark it with a communication token to indicate some sort of information about your hand. If I put this token at the top of the card, from my perspective, or I'll rotate it for yours, at the top of the card, this indicates this is the highest pink card that I have. If I put it at the bottom, it's the lowest pink card, and if I put it in the middle, it's the only pink card. Looking at my hand, I've got the 3 and 2. This is the highest pink card I have. So I have at least 2 pink cards, so the 3 and 2, or 3 and the 1, possibly the 3, 2, and 1. How am I going to capture this? I want to let people know that I don't have strength in the suit that I need. I then take this reminder card, I add it to my hand to remind myself that this card is still in my hand and I can and must play it depending on the circumstances of the trick. So, what do I want to do to try to capture this pink 9? Someone could tell me they have the pink 9, or perhaps someone wants to communicate a different way. This player over here has the pink 9. They could put that down, but that doesn't necessarily help me. Maybe they want to instead do something like this, where they put down, I have only one blue card. Looking at their hand. Okay, well, if they have only one blue card, possibly I can lead an 8. Everyone has to play blue if possible. This player throws in blue. As long as I win the trick, someone doesn't play a blue 9 on top of me, I lead the next trick. I can lead a blue 7. This player now has no blue. So instead of playing blue, they can discard the pink 9. And as long as my blue 7 is the highest blue in that trick, then I will capture the pink 9 and continue. Okay? If someone has only 2 blue cards and possibly they have the blue 9, they might want to communicate that to let me know that my plan won't work. Or that this player has to hold off on throwing the pink 9. So if this player has the blue 9, perhaps they would put that down in front of them. This is their only blue card. And this player knows to hold off on throwing the pink 9. And hopefully they think I'll have another blue in order to communicate or play that and successfully win this pink 9. Lots of tricks involved with communicating. When's the right time to do it? Which card do you want to communicate with? And when do you actually want to play that card? Once you play the card, your communication is done for that round. This card goes away, you take the reminder card out of your hand, and you continue playing. The communication tool does have limits. You can transmit direct information only about a card in your hand if it is the highest, lowest, or only card of that colored suit. If I have a 4, 6, 8 of a suit, I can't put down the 6 because the 6 is neither the highest, nor the lowest, nor the only card of that color. You can't communicate a rocket, and you can't communicate that you don't have a suit because you cannot put down an empty set in front of you and then mark it with a token. No, you must put a card down in front of you. But you infer a lot of information anyway in trick-taking games based on how other people play, and that will work the same in the crew. So the communication tool is something extra on top of the normal communication through card play. You have no external signals, don't agree on anything ahead of time. It's just communicating by putting down the card, and then you're going to watch what people do, how they play cards out of their hand, and then carry on that way, trying to complete whatever the missions are. And the missions get more complicated over time. I talked about the first 3 missions. Mission 4, you turn over 3 task cards. So 3 players will have tasks. Doesn't matter what order they're captured in, but that has to be 3 separate tricks in order to capture those cards. With the 5th mission, it's a little different. The commander now asks each player, after looking at their cards, whether they feel good or bad. After hearing that, you send one player to sick bay, and they cannot capture any tricks. They're so sick, they cannot possibly lead, so they better not win. And as long as that player wins no tricks, then you complete the mission and you move on to the next one. So things escalate over time, and the difficulty of missions varies a lot depending on the number of players in the game. Because with 3 players, each player has a hand of 13 cards. One player has 14, they don't play one of those cards. With 4 players, you have 10 cards in hand. With 5 players, you have only 8. So you will have only 8 tricks in mission 4, for the 3 people who need the capture cards to capture those cards. With 3 players, you have 13 tricks. So you have 5 more tricks, which gives you lots more opportunity to pass leads around and get people exactly where they need to be in order to win certain cards. So I've heard lots of people talk about how the 3-player game is much easier and they get through lots of missions with no difficulty, and 5 players is much more difficult. And I've seen some of that in practice, but it doesn't always hold up. We had one game where we failed mission 2, where you only have to complete 2 task cards in any order. We failed that 4 times in a row with 4 players. Maybe that doesn't say good things about us and our playing skill. Sometimes the hands just don't break your way, or you are making plays that are perfect for you and your plan and for what you're trying to do, but someone else is making their own plays for what is ideal for them, and those two just intersect the wrong way, and then you fail the mission. I've seen that multiple times where each person individually is doing smart things, and you can see that they're each doing smart things, and yet they just don't all line up. And you just shuffle up and you play again. Maybe it's frustrating for you, maybe not. I mean, that's the challenge of the game, is trying to complete the missions with the trick taking being a tool to do that, and you thinking about your hands in very different ways because you have different challenges than you do in a normal trick-taking game. And it's really been the appeal of the game for me, where, again, I played it 50 times. I've only made it through mission 9, and that's mostly because I was playing at the conventions for the most part, and you'd play 6, 7, 8 times with someone. You'd get up through a certain number of missions, and then they say, yeah, I got to go meet someone for lunch, or I want to move on to another game, or I have whatever going on. So I'd start again with a new group, starting at mission 1, and we go again, and keep doing this over and over again. I never got tired of mission 1, or mission 2, mission 3, mostly because you would complete those missions in only a few tricks, shuffle up and move on. It's a training system to learn how the game works. And it's interesting to see how Cosmos has laid out the rulebook, which is kind of a beefy thing. So the rulebook is 44 pages, with half of it being the actual rules, and then half of it being missions. So you can go through the logbook, you can track who's part of your crew, how many times you've attempted each mission, how many times you've failed, and you can track that score at the bottom if you want. There's a token that you can spend where you have to increase the number of attempts you've made at a mission, and you spend that token and each player passes a card to the neighbor. I haven't used that token yet because I don't care how many attempts I've tried. That's not what I'm playing the game for, but different people have different reasons for playing a game. Now, the rules, to get back to that, it's 22 pages of rules. So for people who are experienced trick takers, you can just say what I said at the beginning: cooperative trick taking game with tasks instead of points. You complete the task to win the game, and then you go on to a harder mission. That's all you need to know, and you can get a sense of how this works. You can imagine what the missions are going to be as you escalate over time. So you're going to add more specific tasks, or these tasks have to be taken in order, or this card has to be captured before this one, but it doesn't matter when these other two are captured. Or you have to win a trick with a 1. Anyone can win a trick with a 1 and the mission is complete. Or a 9 cannot win a trick. That's one of the missions. And then you add on to that, so the next time it's a 9 can't win a trick, and players have to win these randomly determined cards. So you keep escalating the challenges, and of course, those will be more complicated as you progress and as you add more players in the game, because you have fewer tricks in which to manipulate everything in order to make that happen. I'll leave that up to you, whether that's good or bad, right? You can escalate through the challenges as you wish. You can jump around to the missions wherever you want. That's up to you. I've enjoyed going through them in order, working my way up, because it's more the camaraderie of the group. And what's interesting is seeing a lot of similarities between The Crew and my favorite game of 2018, The Mind. They are both cooperative games that are based solely on cards. That's basic similarities, but it's more about the feel of the game and the interaction among the players as you're playing, because you're not concerned so much with the actual playing of the cards. There's a lot of games where you kind of play them with blinders. You're looking only at the game components and trying to figure things out. But The Mind is very much a game of reading other players and trying to figure out what they have and when they're going to play. For those who don't know, it's a deck of cards, 1 to 100. You're trying to discard cards in a single discard pile in ascending order only by playing when the time is right. Whoever has the lowest card has to discard it, but you don't know who that is because you can't communicate what you have. So you have that same element of limited communication, where instead you're only reading people by someone starting to reach for a card, or someone leaning in, or someone just looking more nervous as they're watching other people, what they're doing. All of that comes through in The Crew as well, with how quickly someone plays. Sometimes they'll throw something out and you're like, it's probably the only card they have in that suit, because they didn't even have to think about what to play. It just, whoop, done. Or how they're communicating, what they possibly have in their hand, and how they're trying to play around things in order to capture something. You also have the more emotional gratification of play where you have lots of highs and lows for how things are going to play out. I mean, with the mind, you're discarding cards, and often you'll have a run of cards where it's just like 26, 27, 28. Everything just comes out perfectly, and you get this little rush. Because how did that work? It feels like magic, but it's also partly chance. It's partly chance, partly observation, and it all just worked together perfectly. And you get those feelings in the crew as well when you have a plan for how you think you're going to pass the lead to a certain player because you have the thing they want to capture, but you have to make sure that they're leading the thing that then you can throw off of, and it all works, and you're just like, yes, everything came together perfectly. And it's kind of the romantic comedy aspect of gameplay, which I haven't heard in this context before, but I was thinking about it. This is the meet cute moment of these games. So if you watch a lot of romantic comedies, there's sort of a formula for how they go, and there's something called the meet cute, which is the humorous way in which the leads are introduced to one another. Their initial interaction where either something goes wrong, something goes right, something twists the right way. You've got this emotional moment where there's this idea that they could be a thing. Okay. There's lots of these highs and lows for how this develops. The night starts poorly, or something goes wrong, or the car was stolen, or there's all these things that go on. But you have these up and down emotional moments, and that's what these games deliver to players, is those types of moments and the ups and downs of it. Partly because gameplay is very short. You're going to complete a hand of cards in 8 to 13 tricks at most, and often a lot sooner, because either you satisfy the task for the mission or you fail. And as soon as you fail one thing, whatever, shuffle up, redeal, go. And the mind works the same way, where you've got 1 to 12 cards, depending on the number of players, and you play through them, and things escalate very quickly in terms of the emotional involvement, for some players, of the game. Of the tension of the winning, of how is it going to work out. And then we completed the level, we completed the mission, whatever it is. So that relief, the relaxation, and then you shuffle up and then you start again. And so it has these great high and low moments that come through repeatedly delivering this experience. And it's funny to see those similarities between the two games, with the cooperative nature of them, with the limited communication, with these emotional moments, this very short playing time, with this iterative feel where you get a sense of what other people are going to do. So you play with people who might be experienced in trick taking, but now you have to come together and learn how to communicate the right way and get the right message across so that you can complete something together. It's a very different feel, and yet those feel of those two games is very similar, and it's just interesting to see those paired. Or it's what I'm bringing to the game. It's one of those, right? Maybe it's in the design and maybe it's in the player. And that's kind of the interesting thing, of course, why people like different games is they're bringing different things to the table. The game itself is bringing something to the table, and it's that intersection of the two that makes the experience, and whether you like a game or not. And the crew is not perfect. Well, let me talk a little bit about that. So the big problem with the crew is that, again, this is a game designed for a $13 and €13 MSRP. So the cards are really thin. They're flat. They don't feel good. After 20 or 30 plays on this copy, they already started to get a little gummy, a little gross. So I sleeved them all, and that's fine. I'll work with that, although I prefer not to sleeve cards. But I also wanted it to last, and now I'm up to almost 60 plays. I de-sleeved it for this video just so I wouldn't get glare on the cards. But the English publisher, or the North American publisher of the game, Thames and Cosmos, has announced that its English version of the game, due out in the first half of 2020, will have better card stock. I don't know what that means yet, but they determined there's enough interest in the game that they're going to spend a little more, which will probably entail a raising of the MSRP, but they're going to have better card stock, which is ideal because right now in this video, I'm raving to you about how much I enjoyed this game, but I'm also telling you the cards are kind of junky. I would much prefer, instead of a $15 game where I have to say that, if it's a $20 game where it's where I say I absolutely love this game and these cards are great quality and they've held up through 60 plays, no problem. I'd much prefer to do that. So we'll see how the cards look when that English version comes out. The other issue sort of relates to the nature of how the game is taught. Again, if you're familiar with trick-taking games, you're going to pick this up very quickly. And you can ignore the story context if you want to do that, or you can dive into it. So the idea, as you might grab from the subtitle, the quest for Planet 9, Pluto has been demoted, but we have signs that there is some other planet out there beyond Pluto, and we're going to train a crew to prepare to travel that distance. That's an insane mission. I mean, we can't even get to Mars right now, but this is what we're going to do. And you are going to be part of that crew. And the missions are structured as a learning exercise where you are meeting your teammates, you're learning to work together. Oh, mission 5, one of you has to go to the sick bay, and you carry on. Eventually, you're going to launch, and the missions are telling that story. And then they give you a particular challenge that relates to that element of the story as you progress towards this planet number 9. But this could have been done a little differently. So the rulebook is designed to teach you trick-taking games, but it's also incredibly imposing, I would think, for someone who is not familiar with them, because you were confronted with this 44-page book when you initially open the box. And you, okay, oh, only half of this is missions. All right, well, let me actually learn the game. And you go on. This is not something you're going to take out at game night and probably just read through the whole thing and teach people how to play. You're just going to be like, let's just play something else. Let's play something we know. So the game is designed for both experienced trick takers and those who have not played trick-taking games before, but it doesn't really seem ideally set up for teaching someone trick-taking games just because of the length of rules available. It's kind of an interesting challenge how to make this happen, where someone can learn the game more easily. Because I've heard this game already touted as Spiel des Jahres winner of 2020. This is the game that will absolutely win because it is so appealing, and it is for a certain audience, but I don't know whether it is for Hans casual gamer, right? How are they going to take with it? Maybe they know enough Doppelkopf and other trick-taking games that they'll be just fine and they'll carry on from that. But I think Cosmos could have enhanced the learning possibilities. For one, if you look at the cards in the game, all the cards of the same number have the same artwork, right? So number 7 of green and blue, they look the same. There's nothing there. There's no story involved with the art. But ideally, the yellow suit could have been, I don't know, engineering, and the green could have been astronomy, and the blue could have been biology, because you need to be aware of human anatomy as you're traveling, out interplanetary distances. You could have cast the story more along these lines, where the rockets are now the super trump because they have a little knowledge of everything, and you knowing a little bit of everything is better than you having some particular skill. And so that gives you a story behind the cards themselves and what you're trying to do with the task. So the task isn't just capture a pink 9, but it's instead prove that you have the best engineering skills. And you have to do that by winning this card. So you want the level 9 engineer. How are you going to claim that when you only have a 4 and 5 engineering skill? Well, you're going to use your other skills to approximate that. And you can use those levels of skills when you're actually teaching the game to other people. So instead of talking about leads and you have trump and who's going to lead after that, you can sort of do that in terms of experience. Where, okay, whoever has the best overall skills, the 4 of rockets, is going to lead to the first trick. And they can play whatever they want. And I play a 6 of astrophysics. And then whoever plays the high, everyone else must demonstrate their skill in astrophysics. And whoever has the best astrophysics skill, you can hear my cat here. Whoever has the best astrophysics skill will lead the next trick or lead the next excursion, or however you want to think of it, as you pass leads around based on who is best at a particular excursion or a challenge for the moment. Oh, you have the 3 rockets, you're the best overall skill. Okay, you lead the next time. So the game plays the same way, but it's taught differently and it's explained differently, and so you have different context for it, and now the missions play into that rather than just you're capturing a pink 9, but you're doing something in particular. What's with my cats? Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Emmett. Okay. He's apparently going to be a pest. I don't have a door to lock in my studio here. So I'll just show you him. Now, the second element to the gameplay that seemed like it could have been done differently was actually explaining or teaching how the game works. And this is a different sort of challenge. It's something I think about a lot in terms of attracting new players to a game. But in theory, you could have had the box a little differently, where you would open the box and you have a small pack of 3-4 cards that it says, give this to player 1. And it includes the commander token. It includes a small card to show what your task is. And it has 4 cards of the main deck. Give this pack to player 2 and player 3, and of course players 4 and 5 if they're available. Open those cards. Hey, player 1, you're the commander. You must capture this card in order to complete this mission and move on to the next mission. And it's a blue 5 or whatever. What do you want to do that? Whatever card you play, other players must play that type of card if possible, and whoever plays the highest card of that color wins. So you read that off to the players. Oh, I've got a blue 7. I don't play the blue 7. And then someone else does this. And you see how you have a very scripted setup where people have cards in particular that let them do certain things, and you see how things play out, and you succeed with the mission. You learn the basics of gameplay by being led through it. And of course, if you know trick taking, then you just skip all that and you shuffle all the cards together and you get on with it. But if you don't, then you have already run through the game learning by doing rather than learning by reading, which is, in my experience, always more successful. And that is what I try to do. Skill I've learned over time is just get components into people's hands as quickly as possible and make them do stuff. And they'll initially make plays that maybe aren't ideal, but they will learn more easily by seeing the consequences of their actions and see how everything plays out. Maybe that would be a good idea and maybe it wouldn't. But I think it's an idea that could have been tested with something like this, especially with something that is in theory aimed at the Spiel des Jahres audience. I don't even know if Cosmos had that in mind at the time, because of course they released this as a game with very inexpensive materials, just throwing out at the audience, and maybe it has captured more buzz than they intended. And so now they're like, oh yeah, we'll escalate the card stock, we'll get that all set up, and maybe we'll look at how we learn and present things a little differently in a new edition, because we see it has more appeal for a mainstream audience than we initially intended. I don't know if that's actually what they're going to do, but that's the way I've been thinking about the game. I mean, as for me, I am happy to teach this game to whoever and play it with whoever. And some people will not work. If you're not a fan of trick-taking games, if you're not a fan of Trump games, then it might not work for you anyway. My wife's a huge cooperative game fan, hates trick-taking, and the hate trick-taking won out over cooperative games. So she's like, I'm out after trying 6 or 7 hands. So it doesn't work for everyone, but it has worked for a lot of people. And I have played it lots of times, and I cannot wait to play it more because, of course, I still have 41 more missions waiting for me. And each new crew I gather together to play, we'll start over and work through this as much as we can together and see how far we get. Hopefully, I'll play with you one time, possibly at one of the other BGG conventions, since that might be the only time that we get to play something together.